Good morning. It's good to see you this morning. We got a few people out here anyway on this rather frigid day. So I'm glad you're here. Yeah, I noted this morning here in Minneapolis, checked the temperatures shortly before I came over here now, and it's minus 13 or 13 below, or I should say negative 13, I guess is what we would say now today, Fahrenheit, and that's negative 25 degrees Celsius for those of you who might be more familiar with that temperature scale. And the wind chill then for here, the feels like temperature, which is a silly name for that, I think, but the wind chill factor, it's a negative 22 here in Fahrenheit and a negative 30 Celsius. So anyway, but it's a bit cold. It's not as cold as it can get here though in Minneapolis, but cool enough. And so anyway, those of you hardy enough to come out today, I'm glad you're here. So, okay, well, today, kind of in honor of the cold maybe, I'm going to start off with this little, I don't know, is it a poem or not? I found it on my my weather calendar for January 1st now. I just set it up yesterday, or yesterday. And month by month, but then day by day, they give you, all kinds of statistics, sunrise, sunset, and record highs and lows and snowfall, and all that sort of thing. So I kind of like that calendar, just kind of follow what's going on, and also what's going on in the heavens as well. They have a page after each month just showing what phenomena, interesting celestial phenomena we might see that month. Anyway, when I unfolded that yesterday and put it up in my kitchen, which is where I keep it, and on the wall, and noted this little poem. There's usually some little inscription in each month, and this one really kind of hit me a bit, and it's by Fabiana Fondavilla, I think, or Fondavilla perhaps. And I believe she's Argentinian, and she was writing about the winter solstice, which of course for her down in Argentina would be in June. But what she's saying here certainly fits for us here now in December and January. And I think it's from a book that she has out that's titled The Gift of Cold. Interesting title. So this is just a little excerpt from that. She writes, "If we belong to the sun and its warmth, to the bud and the sprout, to the miraculous flower, we also belong to the wind, the naked branch, the cold. And what would be its offering for us? If we could for a moment disconnect from screens and lights, we would feel winter's whisperings, calling us like it calls the seeds, the leaves, the sap descending, the animal's changing coat, the grass that stops in its tracks and saves its strength for spring." It really struck a note with me when I read that. If we belong to the sun and its warmth, I'll just read it through again. If we belong to the sun and its warmth, to the bud and the sprout, to the miraculous flower, we also belong to the wind, the naked branch, the cold. And what would be its offering for us? If we could, for a moment, disconnect from screens and lights, we would feel winter's whisperings, calling us like it calls the seeds, the leaves, the sap descending, the animals changing coat, the grass that stops in its tracks and saves its strength for spring. It was very interesting how she's laying this out. Because we might think we belong to the sun and the warmth and the flowers. That's comforting for us. Easy to associate with that. But here she's pointing out that as much as we might belong, we might think we belong to these things, we also belong to the wind, she says, to the naked branch, to the cold. And so she's kind of looking at it holistically. She's bringing it all out there. We might, subjectively, relate to one side, but not the other. We'll turn our back to the cold. We'll deny it. We don't want to think of it. We don't identify with it. We want to get away from it. We want to go toward what is warm and easy, feels better, feels comforting and nice, and deny the cold and just say that's not a part of me. I deny that, I reject it. And we do this with many things, of course, in life. The awakened, if you're interested in what an awakened mind is like anything, but it is of wholeness, or of at least not losing sight of wholeness, totality. Because the comfort we might want and always seeking warmth and coziness. I saw this, Ann and I, we looked at this movie a couple nights ago. I think it just came out on Netflix. And I don't know what to make of it, really. But it's called Don't Look Up. A bit of a spoof, I think, on our culture today, where they just want to keep the news, and the happy talk, deny anything bad. And it's about this astronomer played by Leonardo DiCaprio, who he and his assistant, they discovered that there's this asteroid heading for Earth. It's going to get here in 5 months or something like that. And it's bigger than the one that wiped out the dinosaurs. And it's on its way. And they couldn't really get anybody, well, they did get some to look up, to pay attention to this. The president was busy, with making plans so she could win the president was played by Meryl Streep, so she could win the next election and that sort of thing. And the news, they'd get onto a news program or news late, I suppose I should say, where they just wanted happy talk. They didn't want any serious talk like that. And it actually does seem like our culture is sort of going insane in this way, in many ways, where we deny the aspects of life that we're uncomfortable with them. We don't want to look at them. Not realizing that, they're there. And if we don't bring them in with what it is that we're always trying to bring ourselves to, just be warm and happy and safe and fun, laugh it up. That will not be what it is that you seek, the warmth and the fun and the happiness. That's going to be in the end, total catastrophe. And, but this is how we live. It's not from an awakened understanding of things, where we see things in wholeness and in their totality. We don't leave out certain aspects just because they might be a little cold or just something we don't want to look at. I feel uncomfortable with that. So we deny. Set up something else where we can occupy ourselves and don't really look at things. And here, in this passage here, Fabiana Fondavia, she's not doing well. Yes, she acknowledges the sun and its warmth and the buds and the sprout and the miraculous flower. Yeah, we all see that, but if we belong to that, we also belong, to the cold and the dark, And but then she asks that if, as much as we belong to these, what would this bring? What is its offering for us? And she said, if we could just for a moment disconnect from the screens and lights, the things we have set up, the screens, I don't know, perhaps what block out, say in the summertime, keep the insects from coming indoors or something like that. I don't know what image beyond that what she might be reaching for there, but, and the lights and the good times, the happy times, the things that are just sort of up, up and away. We're not where we actually look up, but just feels up for us. If we could just, how does he put it here? Just for a moment, take a little time, just for a moment, disconnect from this. Well, I was also going to say something I've mentioned before, I know, but I remember years ago, and talking about what I was just talking about earlier, about where we want to stay warm and safe and all that, deny the cold. I remember years ago where I brought a friend of mine. I'm from northern Minnesota and Duluth, up along the north shore of Lake Superior, there where it can get quite cold. And there was this one winter we were up there. I'm not quite sure why we were up there, but there's a place, a beautiful place, now a state park, but at the time it wasn't. Beautiful place where we had the park on just off the highway and kind of tramped through the woods there, through the snow and ice. It was wintertime. There was still some daylight, but the sun sets early. We got out to this place. I wanted to show them. I was with a couple of friends. I just wanted to show them this beautiful, beautiful place. It's called Shovel Point. It juts out into Lake Superior. And when you come onto it, it's very high. In fact, the cliffs just drop down over 100 feet, 110 feet or so. Rock climbers and all, they like to go up and down these cliffs right over the lake. But as you walk out on this point, the land just keeps sloping downward and downward and downward, till eventually the point just goes down under the water. And so we were tramping through that. And the one friend was really complaining because the wind was very hard off the lake. And it was like, I know it was below zero or Fahrenheit. That's pretty cold. And particularly with the strong winds. And as we got near the point, it's called a point, but it's a pretty blunt, wide point. But big waves, 20 footers probably, at least, were coming in off the lake, crashing on those outer rocks. And it's just lifting this high spray, catching the wind, blowing it up across toward the end of the point, the last, 100 yards or so, it's just bare rock. We didn't dare go out there because it's sloping downward into the lake. If you were to step on that, with the water instantly freezing to the rocks, and it was very slick and sloped into the lake. But we got down toward the edge of the trees there where we could still hang on to branches and things to keep us from just sliding off into the water. But it was this cold and hostile place that could easily kill you if you weren't taking some precautions or if you stayed out there a little too long without provisions. It was just the weather. It's almost as if it was trying to kill you. Just a hostile place. I remember my friend was just complaining, he just wanted to get back to the car. And I said, well, just stop now. Just listen to the wind and look at this remarkable scene we're witnessing here. The water coming up and crashing on the rocks and even coming up into the trees and immediately freezing. So everything was just turning to ice. It was just gorgeous. Sun was about to go down. It was just exquisite lighting. And it was hostile. But I said, there's beauty in this. And I actually got my friend to calm down a bit. And he did, he quieted down and he just looked. He is, as she says here, if we could just for a moment disconnect from screens and lights and things that make us comfortable and take it all in, not just the pleasant and the beautiful as we would determine it or feel it in an instant, but this other thing that seems hostile and go, but here it is, it's part of our world. It's right here. And it has its own sort of beauty if we can open our mind to it and see that. We don't have to make it. We don't have to make either one, the warmth and the beautiful as we might casually think of it, or the cold and the hostile. But we can see it. We can know it. We can feel it. We don't have to deny any of it. It's only in our denying of any of it, favoring this over that or rushing here and there and trying to set it up a particular way to suit me or to get away from that which is uncomfortable, whatever the discomfort might be, not necessarily cold, but any other sorts of discomfort we might feel. If we could just step out of ourselves in that way and open up to this as a whole, we can really step away from that which vexes and pains us and frightens us and makes us uncomfortable. So we don't know that even in the place that we might otherwise find so comfortable that we've set up for ourselves. Because if you look in the places that we do set up for ourselves to be comfortable, to be safe and happy, there's still sorrow and pain and terror right there. And we can find the quiet settledness in a cold, hostile solitude. It's all right there all the time. A mind of wholeness, a mind that's open to the whole. This is an awakened mind. Isn't reaching for this and that or weighing this out against this or that or trying to bring about this as opposed to that. Is living in this. This is an awakened mind. You are living in this too. We are all living in this, in wholeness, in totality, in reality. Always the case with us. And we can open ourselves to this and to see this in its totality and know a peace and a settledness. I was going to say comfort, but not necessarily comfort as we normally might think of comfort, but a settledness. Where we're not frightened or worried or horrified by what might come now. Where we don't have to rush back to the car or put up the screens or so. We can just see this and know it as it is. Oh, of course, then take maybe, minimal precautions to some degree. Why not? But not to occupy ourselves with that, where that's the first thing. And to never stray out of our comfort zone. I don't like that term necessarily, but this is a mind, the mind of the awakened. They never lose sight of the whole. You say, well, yeah, they might, well, yeah, if the awakened was a particular person, yeah, sure, that could happen. But that's not an awakened mind now. In an awakened mind, the awakened mind is of wholeness and totality. That's what it is. If you think that inheres in a particular person and then they slip out of it and you think, well, they're not, what are you doing? Nobody's talking about, I'm not talking about such an event like that or some particular person. I'm pointing out what an awakened mind is. And you can know this. You can't take it on as an identity and no, I'm awake, no, we'll think this way when we're just still caught up in particularness and me, and there's that, and weighing things out and all of that. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm just trying to give some indication of what a mind of wholeness and awakenedness is. It's always available because we're always in this situation where the cold and the warmth, they're in the same place, really, because either one of them can suddenly switch to looking like the opposite, and they do. And then I'm not talking about necessarily cold and warmth. I'm talking about all dualities. But there's a way of living where we can see this and know this and realize this from moment to moment. And I think Fabiana here, she touched on this, I think, in this little passage here. Again, the way it appeared in my calendar, I'm not sure if this is a poem or if it's just a little excerpt taken from a book. But it's beautiful what she says here. But if we could for a moment just disconnect from the screens and the lights and the things we might set up to keep us isolated and sheltered in a place that we think is comfortable. My teacher, Katagiri Roshi, pointed out that, yeah, you can find this place that's comfortable for a while and use this image of a feather bed. I think it was something like that. And you first lie down and it's just so comfortable. And you want to stay there forever. But then he points out though, but after a time, it becomes torture. All you want to do is to get out of that place. Yeah, but this is how it is. Of course, then we'll run over and try to find some other comfortable spot. And the next. We never taste the heady wine of freedom, as a Taoist passage I read. We never know the freedom that is ours. That's free of that mind of bondage that we're holding so tightly to. All in a desperate attempt to be comfortable, to be satisfied, to be happy, to get some sense of knowing what this is. But we don't find it there. We simply don't, and you will not. Only briefly, possibly for a little while until that becomes torment. This is where the vast majority of us human beings, this is where we live out our life. Not knowing what is right there in every moment available to you. This mind of wholeness. It's not your mind. You forget your mind, your will, your determination. What you think is right, holding to this view or that view, or the view of me, myself. If you start to see that that's sorrow, that's pain right there. That's imprisonment, that's bondage. To carry on in that usual way desperately trying to just keep ourselves. We've got it utterly backwards. And you say, let go of that. Yeah, that's not easily done to let go of that. You can let go of that, though, if you finally see what it is I'm trying to help you see here. But you really need to see this. So you could, in your gut, not just in your will or in what you physically try to set up for yourself with this sort of thing, but you really see this. Can this drop away? This bondage that we otherwise keep ourselves, tied up and bound in. But if we could for a moment just disconnect from the screens and lights, we would feel winter's whisperings. Yeah, so it's like with my friend when I brought him out to that snowy, icy, windy, probably the wind chill there is probably 30 below or more. I don't know. It was a very hostile place. Beautiful, but hostile. And we're right in it, but gorgeous place. But if we could disconnect from, I want to get back to the car, just disconnect from that. Now take this in. For a moment, we're not going to stay here too long. Everything will change no matter what it is, even if we're not going to stay. The situation itself wouldn't stay. It'll change. But if we could just disconnect for a moment, we would feel winter's whisperings, calling us like it calls the seeds. Seeds. And keeping the seeds in their shells, in their, calyxes. Just keep them there. Hold them there. For the winter calls to the seeds, speaking to the seeds. It calls us like it calls the seeds, the leaves. Whether the leaves that had already fallen now under the snow and the ice that's accumulating, or the seed and the leaflet in the bud held tight now in the branch. And it calls the sap descending. Yeah, the sap draining away from the tree to come back. Now here in Minnesota, we have a lot of maple leaves, the trees. And in the spring, it's usually, but it depends on where you are in the state, but in March and April up north more. But when we start getting these days that it gets up into the 40s during the day, drops down below freezing at night, that's when the sap begins to rise. And that's when we can tap for maple syrup. But here are the leaves and the sap descending, the winter speaking to this now, and the animals changing coat. So the animals putting on a nice big fur coat. For some, maybe white. So they have a little bit of camouflage during the winter. At least up here in the northern states here. And then the grass, it stops this calling of the winter. It stops the grass in its tracks. I like that. Stops the grass in its tracks and saves its strength for spring. Yeah. So the winter is telling us all about the whole year. And there'll be spring, and there'll be summer and fall. And we will find the spring and the summer and the fall in winter. And in summer, we find the fall and the winter and the spring. We're seeing this in wholeness, in totality. It is all right here, all the time. Only some of it is manifesting in any particular moment. It doesn't all express itself all at once. Well, in a sense it does. But much of it is, I don't want to say hidden exactly, because if we have the eyes to see this, it's not hidden, but it's not showing itself. But it is all there. And if we can hear the winter whisperings in summer, we can remember the warmth of summer in winter. And you think, well, I wish I was there. Maybe something like, I'll fly there. I'll go down south. I'll do. Yeah, we can do that. Now, as an old guy, I grew up in this north of here, more rugged winters we have here. And they were harsher too when I was younger. I swear, probably climate change. We don't seem to get the winters like we used to get. So for most of you, it might be in southern climes south of here, Minneapolis. I'm sure this probably still seems pretty cold and rugged up here. But I can understand this, wanting to go south and get into warmer. As an older person now, it's a little harder to take the cold and that. But that's my little mind, my personal mind, that starts to trip up. Now, there might be some real precautions I need to take as an older person, on the ice and, slipping and stuff like this. And I got more brittle bones now than I had when I was younger. There's things to take into account there, but I don't want to lose track of this mind of wholeness. I want to bring it back. So when I find myself slipping into my smaller mind, my smaller self here, and complaining maybe a little bit, I don't think I complain too much about the winter. But even now, as I'm getting older, though, I do have, seems like I have more that I could legitimately complain about. But it's here. And so we just live it out. This moment, this day, this year, this time of pandemic, just live it out. Do what you need to do. Be considerate of others and taking care of yourself. You can take care of others as well. This is always the case, not just necessarily in this time of COVID. But it's the mind of wholeness that I'm speaking of. To see if you can recall this and come back to this. And see if maybe you don't lose sight of it, if you can make some effort not to lose sight of this. Particularly in those moments when you feel yourself slipping into your own narrow viewpoint or groove or whatever you get yourself locked into. Open yourself out to what is really here. Take care of the things you need to take care of because of the season and the time of day or whatever it might be. But stay open, because all the different times and experiences that are there to be had, that you've had, and that are there to be had, that's all right now. And you can live out of this, but you live out of this in your mind. You don't have to go running off to other places. If you must, that's fine. I'm not saying you don't run off to other places. If you do run off to other places, watch how you're running off to them. Is it in some desperation to get away from something, to get to something? Just live in this moment, right from here. And from here, yeah, there are these other places as well, right here. And we can learn to live out of this. This is freedom. This is real freedom of mind. Oh, I probably should end this here now, but wasn't looking at my slip here, but I did put a little note in there to tie this into the 10th precept. Should have got to that earlier, I guess. For the 10th precept that we look at what Bodhidharma said about this 10th precept of not to abuse the three treasures. He said not holding a view of not holding a dualistic view of ordinary and enlightened. This is called the precept of not abusing the three treasures: Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. And but not to have a dualistic view. See, with the mind of wholeness, we don't have to draw this distinction between ordinary beings, ordinary people, and then the enlightened, as if they were different. Because in any moment, who's awake and who is not. This doesn't inhere in any particular person or people, either ordinary or enlightened. Can't single out anyone and say, oh, just an ordinary mind there, ordinary or enlightened. We'll do that. We'll go searching for something like that. We might want to become something like that. I want to become the enlightened person. But this is not enlightenment. You're expressing an ordinary mind with that. But at any moment, you can express, and you do from time to time, and you might not notice, you express enlightened mind as well. So you don't have to be filled with too much anxiety about what you might like. You might get over here, go over there, or try to identify others out there, that they're this or that. And it's true that, the enlightened, there are few. And the ordinary, that's the many, the fur. But you don't think of that in terms of individual persons, individual people. And don't identify with either one. Any one of us, from time to time, moment to moment, can express and wake up to this mind of totality, this mind of wholeness. So if we can remember that and come back, well, as you remember it by noticing the narrowness that you might be allowing yourself to slip into. Identifying yourself too tightly with some particular thing, or just simply as yourself, sitting here separate and apart from all of that. That's the confusion. That's not the mind of wholeness. That's the mind of just held within the tight confines of an illusory self. It's just a matter of recognizing when you're doing that, recognizing slipping into delusion, recognizing delusion. This is awakening. And it's always there. And you do express it. Awakening, enlightenment. But usually we don't know what we're doing because we're reaching for this and reaching for that. We're occupied with this and that. We hear things connected to this and that. And of course, the center of all of that is me. And we miss the actual life that's being lived out. You're always living out of totality. There's always enlightenment right here in this moment. It's just a matter of waking up to it, realizing it. And the realizing of that is not going to be out of the tight confines of the self here. It is in finally not destroying that or getting rid of it, right? That appears to be here, but realizing that it's empty of its own being, its own self. It's empty of any kind of substance. This is seeing the mind. This is seeing with the mind of wholeness and totality. Well, maybe I said enough here this morning. So, any questions about anything that I said here? Anybody out there? Nobody out there. Okay. Nobody out there has a hand raised, I guess. I hope there's somebody out there. Huh? 50. Okay. All right. Yes. Okay. Who is it? Okay. Yeah, Ken.
There you go. I'm unmuted now. I just wanted to mention there's a book by J.B. McKinnon, The Day the World Stopped Shopping. And he talks in here about the advent of air conditioning. We've all got used to keeping the temperature in our homes at a certain level, summer and winter. And he reminds us that before that, people were quite used to living between 60 degrees and 80 degrees, you know, and only when you start shivering, he suggests you might want to put a sweater on, but your body just gets used to that. And that's what we've been doing here in my home. And it's just a whole different experience to, you know, just experience your body at 60 degrees, no problem. Thought I'd mention that, that's all.
Yeah. Well, if your mind can settle with that, yeah, there's no problem. People have lived with even, colder kind of ambient temperatures than that. And warmer than 80 too, I suppose. Though I know myself as a northern boy, I have trouble, with the high end of it. For me, 80 degrees is too hot to do anything. You can't do anything without sweating or something. So, but I've adjusted to the warmer climes down here in Minneapolis. So we get 80 and 90 degrees here, and sometimes even over 100. So, but it's what we get used to. Again, it's with the mind. All of this is with the mind. What I've been pointing out today, and you don't need to be too concerned. I mean, within reason. I mean, you got to take care of your surroundings and be reasonably comfortable, and so But it's your mind. Where are you going to adjust to all of this? And it's not even a matter of adjusting to it. Mind of totality, we can settle down in whatever it might be, whether it's temperature or any number of other things. COVID, famine, who knows what might break loose here for any of us, really. But it's your mind. Watch your mind, because that's where it's all going to go. You slip away, you lose your grip on this or that, and it's not even a matter of gripping anything. But just it's going to be in your mind where the trouble comes. But thank you, Ken, for that, if I understood what you were saying. Anything else?
think maybe when she mentioned screens,
Yeah.
I think she meant the iPhone screen.
Oh, of course. Of course. See, I'm not a techie guy. Like I said, I wasn't quite sure what she meant by that, but yeah, of course. I do have an iPhone, finally. That's, for me, that's so high tech, I barely know how to use it. So, but yeah, I think you're right. Well, I think I did say, though, I'm not quite sure what you meant by screens. Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot more sense. But it's still the same thing, that we'll distract ourselves and, yeah, go off in our own little world there with my iPhone or my whatever screen we have. Anything else?
I have a question, please.
Yes.
This is Galen from Denver, and I'm
Ah.
sorry, I don't know how to raise my hand on Zoom, so I just jumped in.
Oh, that's fine.
Thank you. I've been thinking lately a little bit about humor and awareness, and it's occurred to me that when a joke is told, there's something there that is seen kind of instantly that's not exactly expressed by words. And of course, if you explain a joke in words, it's no longer a joke.
Yeah.
And this seems similar to awakening and awareness, but there's something very much grasping going on at the same time. And I think I'll stop the question there and just hand it over to you.
Well, so you say you think there's grasping, you mean on the part of, if we're interested in awareness, we reach for that, we're grasping, we're trying to get words for it or something. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, not so much, but in telling a joke it feels like seeing awareness, but it's very much about grasping something. Like often a joke may have to do about someone who is other or something that is other.
Yeah.
And we are
sure.
grasping something about the other. So on one hand, it seems like a direct seeing, like it is awareness, the experience of telling and hearing and enjoying a joke. On the other
Mhm.
hand, it's very, very much not a wholesome sort of event.
Right.
So
Right.
just any comment or thoughts you have on that, please.
Yeah, well, very often jokes and humor are at the expense of others and that sort of thing. And very often, we need to kind of look at that very carefully, because if the other, if we're actually trying to make fun of the other or to have a joke at their expense and that sort of thing, well, this isn't really funny. And might want to look, if we react that way, we laugh at that or whatever, I might want to take a second look at that, look at your own mind in that regard. But this, of course, doesn't always mean that a joke is necessarily at, where you're pointing out an other or something like this, that it's necessarily at their expense. I remember in the family I grew up in, my father, he had a lot of brothers. He was one of 10 actually, but in adulthood there were 7, but some died young. But and among the brothers, there were aunts too. They were somewhat like this, but I remember among my uncles, they were my uncles, and they were always ribbing each other and joking, and you could say at each other's expense sometimes, but it was very clear they all loved each other and respected each other, and it was just sort of a way of kind of maybe bonding, So, and maybe sometimes in another group setting or a family or something like that, things aren't taken in this way. But because I've seen that too, in some ways, it kind of reminds me of how my uncles used to tease each other and stuff. But you could sense people were getting hurt, and so I don't want to always say that you can do this at the expense of someone. But it's in the teller who's telling the joke. If in their mind they're really just trying to stick it to somebody else or something on that sort, that's something to be careful of. And in a given setting too, it might not be clear that the recipient of whatever it is you might say in that regard you mean it as a sort of a way to bond and be friendly with somebody. But if they don't take it that way, if they don't understand that that's where that's coming from, that can cause a great deal of hurt and pain, So I think we need to, and of course, a lot of this is, as you said, is unspoken, and it's just, there. But it's a matter of, for each of us, just watch your own mind. And when it comes to the telling or the receiving of a joke, you just see if your mind remains kind of or remains balanced and isn't really out there to have a laugh here at someone else's expense. And at some point too, we might begin to realize that, well, we don't need to laugh so much at that or to laugh, hard. But at the same time, then be careful not to judge the person who told that joke, because that's carrying on the same kind of pain and suffering here. Just let it go. Kind of like what was it? Thumper, yeah. Thumper's mother. The advice he gave Thumper, Bambi and the little rabbit Thumper, I think it was. And Thumper, I think he told a kind of a joke against one of the other little animals there or something, and his mother said, "No, Thumper," she said, "if you can't say anything nice about someone else, then don't say anything at all." So something like that. Still, there are circumstances. I try to give an example, maybe a poor example between my uncles and that. It can be a very, kind of humorous and jokes are being tossed about in that, but everybody understands, that this is not to hurt anybody. So anyway. So I don't know if I helped you there with that at all, Galen, or if I said anything that was of any value there, but thank you for your question.
Thank you for your answer. I appreciate it.
Mike,
Mike, yeah, Mike.
Yeah. What about satire? That is always having a joke at someone else's expense.
Yeah, that's
And I enjoy satire.
Yeah, I do too, actually, but but it depends. I mean, there's a point where we can kind of sense we're going too far, we're going over the edge or something like that. On the other hand, too, satire often where that is maybe something done in the public sphere in the sense of, say, like a political figure or something like this, where they put themselves out there in the public, and satire might be maybe kind of a lighthearted way to maybe point out something that you're doing, political leader, that has consequences and that maybe aren't so good. And we could do that with some humor and that sort of thing. So there's no real clear, right or wrong here, or this is good and that's bad. I can't just say across the board one way or the other, but it's always a matter of just, watch your mind. Also, maybe have some sense of the mind of the person who's telling it. Are they doing it out of some kind of cruelty, or is there something else going on there? And there could be any number of things, and that are taking place there. But it's a matter of just keeping your eye on that. And also, but most of all, watch your own mind. Realize where you are. And if you're going off into some area where there's some bitterness in that, something like that, just back off. Follow Thumper's mother's advice there. Just don't say anything at that point. If you catch other people doing that to another, that sort of thing, don't judge. And in most cases, it's probably nothing you could even say. Say to the one who's throwing a dart at someone else. But it's always a case-by-case situation. So it's hard to say, but again, kind of a universal thing, always, just watch your mind. Know where your heart is. And then speak in the way that you can, if you must. In most instances, you don't even really have to say anything. So I don't know if that helps, Mike.
Yep.
Yeah. Yes, Matt?
Hi, yeah.
Hey, yeah,
Thank you for your talk this morning. Towards the end, you had comments on the 10th precept
yeah.
about the ordinary and the awakened mind. And it was that comment that sparked an idea, or I guess a recognition in my mind that I realize I find myself catching my own lack of awareness and dealing with that. But when I see that in
There's nothing to deal with there. Just see what's happening and let it go at that. Don't do anything about it. Just be aware of it.
Sure. And I guess when I see that in others, I do notice that that duality, that aversion and grasping for hoping that the people I interact with, I might be able to share a sense of that idea to wake up to reality as it is. And I guess it's maybe a poorly formed question, but just a recognition that I guess there is a tendency in my own mind to create that duality between awakened and ordinary. And I was just curious if you had any thoughts on how to be aware of that. And yeah, I guess I'll leave the question there.
Yeah, well, it's I mean, it's a very common thing, a very common idea that people will have, that there's this difference between ordinary and enlightened. I mean, if there weren't, then why do we have these terms, ordinary and enlightened? And then but the problem is that then this is where that in itself isn't a problem so much, but we think that these terms apply to individuals that we might know or read about, individuals in history, or an individual like myself, and any of the people here or out there in Zoom land, or anywhere, But we think that these terms, ordinary and enlightened, and they adhere to people like identities. Well, that person is deluded, or this person is enlightened, and we'll look at it in this way, and that's where we're very confused. Are there ordinary and enlightened minds? Yes, we can say that. Yes, yeah. But do you want to get hold of one? And you'll never do that. And also, there's a teaching that Norm often points out of our teacher, Katagiri Roshi, where he would say that, that there's this huge difference between ordinary and enlightened. It's vast. In fact, I'll tell you right now that there's nothing greater than this difference between ordinary and enlightened. But as Katagiri Roshi used to point out, he says, but I can't tell you what it is. Why can't he tell us what it is? Because he doesn't know? No, he knows quite well. But because it will hurt us or something like that. It's just simply because you can't draw this distinction between ordinary and enlightened. In other words, you can't put it into a conceptual form. Is there ordinary mind? Yeah, we can say there is. No, I'm not talking about a person now. Well, don't people have their minds in people? Well, if you think so, yeah, now you're going to be confused, but I'm not talking from that understanding. Are there ordinary minds? We're talking about minds, not people. And is there such a thing? Yes, we can say that. Yeah, I already said it doesn't inhere in people, individuals. Are there enlightened minds? Yes, we can say that as well. But you're not going to get hold of anybody that these minds belong to as such. And the difference between these minds, as Katagiri Roshi said, is vast. There's nothing greater. I'm adding that point myself. This is as different can possibly be. But drawing differences is in this world of this and that and the next thing. So it seems like in this world where we're drawing that, now we have individuals and that sort of thing. So it seems like then maybe I'm saying that we can apply it to these people. But if you look very carefully, as Katagiri Roshi said, you can't say what that difference is. It's an appearance. It's there as a result of the functioning of consciousness, as all differences are and dualities are. But when you treat it as if you can actually get hold of one particular thing, a deluded person or an enlightened person or a cup or anything else, a bird or the cold weather, as opposed to the hot weather. Now we're caught up in dualities, and we'll have a dualistic view of ordinary and enlightened. But you can't get hold of this. You can't get hold of the cold weather, the hot weather, the cup, the bird, the deluded person, the enlightened person. That's why Katagiri Roshi said, I can't say what that is, because in totality and in wholeness, we don't find these distinctions. And that is your perceptual life. I'll say yours, but actually it isn't really yours. But this is the life of the perceptual direct experience of reality. It is of this nature. There's the appearances of this and that, the things that have been broken out and divided by as a result of this. Well, this is what consciousness is this appearance of this and that. And we'll put value on it, and we'll say how, this is different from that and that sort of thing. But when we get down to seeing that's how things are appearing here in the perceptual experience. As soon as we conceptualize that experience, thinking that there really are these distinct things and people and qualities and whatever, now we're totally caught up in delusion and confusion. And that's why Katagiri Roshi didn't say, is there this distinction? Yes, it's vast. But do you want me to apply this to something now? No, so now I can speak of it. I can say what it is. That's delusion. And he didn't want to wallow in that. He didn't drag us into that. He just simply said, I can't say what that is. So this seems really strange. Conceptually, we can't understand what it is I've just pointed out there, or what Katagiri Roshi was pointing out. And that's where we'll try to go. We'll try to make sense of this conceptually. You won't make sense of it conceptually, but you can see it if you drop trying to figure it out and grasp and make some sense of it one way or another. Just drop all that and just look at the direct, look at what is really being experienced. And what I mean by that is not you look, so you're thinking, okay, I am looking at none of that's still conceptual. When things are broken out in that way, just the immediate, direct realization of this moment. You don't see these distinctions. You can't say what any of them are. Are they there? Well, they certainly are there as appearances. Yep. Are there such distinctions? Can't really say. So then there are no distinctions. Well, you can't really say that. It looks like there are. You can't say that. Nothing. So then there really are. No, you can't. You can't say that. Another way Katagiri would talk about this, kind of in a different context, but said you are the universe, but you're not the universe, you're you. But you're not you, you're the universe. Or you're Buddha. You're not Buddha, we can say this in different ways. Conceptually, this doesn't make sense. And if we're a little careless with that, people say, that's crazy. I don't know. But if you pay very careful attention to what is taking place here, kind of like the thing we were talking about with, is satire, is that something we should, and what we were discussing there? Can't really say. But there's stuff there, we be very careful with the way we handle a lot of these things. I enjoy satire and humor and jokes and things like this, you know, but there's some fine lines and distinctions there to be made, you know, and particularly if this is among minds that are gripping things and thinking, yeah, well, there are these people and they're bad, and then there's these other people and they're better, you know, all that kind of nonsense. That's all coming, you know, from our grasping and gripping minds. I'm just trying to help you to realize that you can drop all of that, at least drop it in terms of thinking that there's something here to be held, to be gotten hold of, to grasp as truth. There isn't. Truth is in the whole, in totality. And you're not going to be able to draw the distinctions there. We're frustrated by that, and we don't want to go there because we want to go where we can draw distinctions and we can play with things. And that's fine with it. That world doesn't disappear. Here we are. The awakened as well as anyone else have to deal with this. But you can do it with a mind that isn't gripping everything. And that's what we can learn to do. With a mind that doesn't expect everything to be spelled out. Oh my goodness, we've gone past the hour here. I better stop. So I hope that's okay. Well, I've lost your name now. I'm sorry, but
Thank
I
you
hope
very
that-
much. It's helpful.
thank you. Okay, I think I probably should. Were there any more? I should end it. I think. Is there one more? Oh, well, here in if you live in Minneapolis or in Minnesota anyway, it's a kind of a local thing. I guess I got mine at Barnes and Noble, I think, but it's for our locality here. Like for example, the kind of weather records, the sunrise and the sunset times and all this sort of thing is kind of focused on the Twin City area. So, and if you're not right here, it might not do you that much good. So, but you might find something like that in your own locality, wherever that might be. So, okay, well, if that's it, I think we could end it here. Thank you.